the new-gen Hemi swaps into classic Mopar muscle cars have become all the rage. The sole purpose of this project was to create a definitive instruction manual for a guy that has never done a Hemi swap before. What we ended up with was a step-by-step guide including all items and part numbers that are needed to swap a 6.1 Hemi into an e-body. This video is not a how-to, but rather an introduction to the thought process and the people behind the scenes that were essential to putting this Hemi swap guide together. So the first time you got to drive this was on the back side of Cruising the Coast, and you headed back. What were your driving impressions?
Well, I've driven it many years with the 250 horsepower and 340, and remember, we built this for a 16-year-old girl at the time. So to drive this car with the 6.1 Hemi in it, it's a night and day difference. Idle, smooth, no fuel, no rich fuel conditions with carburetors we typically encounter, and really a pleasure to drive. So very quick and strong.
You're running 323s in the rear, which are pretty mild, and so highway speeds you have no problem with. RPMs with the 3-speed, no overdrive?
Correct.
So what does it run at RPM wise in theory?
To be honest, I don't know. There's no tack in this package on the Cuda, and we don't really know. I don't know what the RPMs are, but suffice to say that we're nowhere near.
We're not over revving it, right?
Not at all.
Okay. This is Robert Wolf from Mopar Collectors Guide, and we're here today exploring the Pink project. And the car belongs to Steve Williams, a friend of mine, who was looking to update a 340 Cuda that he'd given to his daughter. And we wanted to visit how to do this, how to approach it. And to begin, we want to talk about the car a little bit and tell you guys how we got here. So Steve, the car came from where?
This car was a project that my brother Mike and I had built for my daughter as a 16-year-old when she was in high school. So we built the car with complete restoration on it. It's a pretty stout little 340 in it with a 727 in it. So we built that car as a gift to her, and she drove it her senior year in high school before she graduated and went on to college.
And you guys did all the paint work and all the fab work on this?
Yes, 100% of it. Garage built over the course of about a year and a half. Vintage air, all those components. It took us it was a good family project.
So she had to kind of make a statement when we showed up at school with a pink Cuda in 2010, right? Yeah,
it was. It drew a lot of attention,
yeah.
and you have to be able to manage that as a 16-year-old, which we wasn't exactly sure if she was going to be able to do it.
Right.
So she managed it well. She drove the car. The pink color was something that she specified, because we got her input on the design of the car, the color, the interior, and so on, and then we built the thing over the course of, like I said, a year and a half. So she went to school, junior and senior in high school, and that was a time when all the breast cancer awareness was really getting taken off. And this pink car was the subject of a lot of photos around her school and other venues as well to just bring awareness to breast cancer. So the car was used a lot for those type of events.
So it got a lot of exposure, and she drove it throughout school. She actually drove it as a daily driver?
She drove it as a daily driver in high school. She graduated and had to drive about 40 miles to college. And at that point, it was just drawing too much attention. There were, adults following her to school, and she's 18,
yeah.
And trying to buy the car. And
yeah.
they're taking pictures of it going down the interstate and swerving.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Just a little too much.
Yeah.
So at that point, to go to college, we got her a different vehicle, and this became, just a toy.
Right. So fast forward now, we're 10, 12 years later. And the world has come a long ways as far as power plants and what you can do with these. Mm-hmm. And you told me you wanted to update it, and we looked at the project like we wanted to demonstrate a definitive guide to swapping a new gen Hemi into an e-body. There's lots of people that have done different things, but we wanted to give people an approach of exactly what it took to do it, and therefore we've laid it out in Mopar Collectors Guide as a definitive guide with all the part numbers and everything it takes to do it. The way that we approached it was a little different than most people approach it. So Steve's idea was to buy a complete car versus a crate engine. So Steve, why did you think that was the way to go?
Well, there's a lot of peripheral parts, not just the engine. And to be honest with you, the easiest part is just dropping the engine into the engine bay. It's all the peripheral pieces that clips, wires, wiring harnesses, thermostats, there's some special requirements that this engine has that you have to support and work through that level of detail. So that's generally what scares a lot of folks about doing this. Well, I hooked up with the guys at DIY Hemi, and they have parts, all the transition pieces, I'll call it, they have available, and there's a lot of subtle things that need to be done, minor to me in retrospect, but they have to be done for this to function properly and smoothly and be reliable, because we've been on power tour. We go to cruising the coast. The car literally just came back from cruising the coast in Mississippi. My daughter drove it for the better part of a month down there. That's where she lives, and very reliable, good gas mileage, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So most people will buy a crate engine, and then they'll go to put the crate engine in and figure out it's not going to work with this. They're missing this reservoir. Your idea was to buy an SRT charger and then remove everything from the charger and do the transplant off of that. But you did find out that by using the new charger transmission, you're going to have to cut the tunnel on this car, something you didn't want to do. So the DIY Hemi guys have a harness that they make for this application where you could retain the 727 and all your gauges and everything would work perfectly with it. And that was probably a key element to making this thing come together as smooth as it did, correct?
Correct. And as we did research, I'm talking about my research before getting into this, I wasn't sure about the transmission. The Charger's transmission, it's a 2006 SRT8 Charger with the 6.1 Hemi in it. The transmission is physically much bigger. Taking some measurements and all, I didn't want to cut the car up, cut the Cuda up. So we chose to use a 727 after the DIY Hemi guys have had the proper transition pieces to make it work. Right. Yeah. So now it's got the original pistol grip 727 shifted transmission in there, and the 6.1 Hemi bolted to it. It's
right.
Nice.
So you have an aftermarket pistol grip where the slapstick would go, correct?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So what you did is you bought a 2006 SRT Charger, took the motor out, and then you were able to sell the car and actually recoup some of your money, correct?
Right.
So the theory was you could get $3,000 back on your $9,000 investment, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so this is a family project. I have a son. My son drove this SRT8 in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He drove it a few years all through college, and then it showed up next to the Cuda in Dad's garage. So he wasn't driving it very much and was ready to go upgrade his vehicle. So Mom and Dad, we bought the car from him. With his blessing, he knew we were going to take it apart. I was going to take it apart and upgrade the engine here, because I had looked for really a couple of years trying to get a very good Hemi, used car, used engine, and could not find the perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the Charger one day, and I'm looking at the Cuda, and I think let's put them together, yeah. Okay? And there's a lot of advantages for doing that, okay? Because I knew the whole history of the engine. It had a number of miles on it, but well taken care of, well maintained, and more importantly, it has all the peripheral parts sitting right there to harvest.
Reservoirs for the power steering and the little stuff it takes to make that happen.
All the little things. And again, the research, it physically would fit into the engine bay with no problem, but there's a lot of complicated, at least I thought it was complications to be able to make that engine run reliably, smoothly, and for the outcome of the project that I wanted.
So you could, if you look out in your driveway and you've got a non-SRT with a 5.7, and you could just as easily take that candidate that you normally would be selling as a used car and say, hey, I can build a hot rod out of this pretty easy then.
Right.
So
right. And one of what we did with my son's blessing as well, I sold the Charger less the engine and the computer. Mm-hmm. So we left the original transmission in it, built a support for it, and sold it and the interior was very nice. It was good running, driving, air conditioned, very nice car, but I wanted that Hemi in this car to upgrade it. Mm-hmm. And so my son contributed some parts, my daughter, and it came out to this where we are today.
All right.
Before we go any further, I think it's time to introduce you to two guys that operate as the brain trust for this pink project. Their creed is Hemi Swap the World, and are two of the world's leading Gen 3 experts operating on the cutting edge of real-world Gen 3 Hemi swaps.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, huh? What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? So the guys behind this project are Mike and Blake from DIY Hemi. And they started doing LS stuff and quickly got into the Hemi side of things. But guys, how did you guys get started with this whole trickery of swapping motors?
So yeah, definitely. I started in the LS game. We were years ago,
This
early.
guy, not me.
We're talking about the
You don't claim
2000s, right?
So you had to be pretty young then.
Yeah. Right,
So how old were you when you got doing that?
I was probably 18 at the time.
Okay.
So 20 years ago.
Okay.
There's a local speed shop, LS Speed Shop, and my father actually a GM guy. So,
Okay. We won't tell him about
Yeah,
that.
we won't tell anybody. My mom was a Mopar girl,
Okay.
so it worked out. But anyway, working in the speed shops, I quickly saw how easy it was to do the LS conversion. And there were a lot of websites out there that helped people do the swap. It was informative. It showed you step-by-step wiring diagrams and guides. So you didn't have to buy a harness if you didn't want to back then. And I really had an affection for the E-body. I mean, I was a Mopar person, true and true. We used to go to the Nats every year. My close friend of mine and his father, we'd always go up there to Ohio. And I instantly fell in love with the third gen Hemi when it came out in the early 2000s, so 2005, 2003 era.
So in 2005 and 3, it was very difficult to do swaps because there wasn't a lot of stuff around for it. Why was that? Was it just it hadn't caught up to Mopars yet, or?
I think you had a bit of mysticism. People didn't quite understand how easy it could be.
Mm-hmm.
You had a lot of people drumming it up to being a very complicated process.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, as we discovered years later, it's the same ease, same capability as an LS swap. It's really, there's so many similarities that it's not even funny.
Right.
Yeah. So the difficulty is not there at all. It's just we really didn't, as a group, as a Mopar community, we didn't try. We
Right.
just it was the pink elephant in the corner we didn't talk about. It sounded cool. We wanted to do it, but we never really tried.
So a couple companies got into doing this, but they were semi-successful with it. But how did you guys figure that there was a place for you in that market?
Well, that actually was kind of an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from a grassroots background, I grew up on my tools. That's how I put myself through school. That's how Mike put himself through school, just very hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
I could not afford at the time, those harnesses, they were great, beautiful, worked well. But you're talking about $2,000. And
Mm-hmm.
for a broke college kid working 30 hours a week, 38 hours a week, slinging wrenches, it just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
But I had access to McMaster, Pro Demand, all those wiring diagram softwares. And I said, there has got to be. In the LS world, there was a website called lt1swap.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally was a step-by-step tutorial on how to build your own LS swap harness.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me late one night. I was living out in South Texas. I had moved there for work. And I said, well, why doesn't someone just do this for the Hemi world? Like, why? Like, it cannot be that hard. I didn't know how to do it back
Mm-hmm.
then. I just thought to myself, it couldn't be that hard. So I bought factory wiring diagrams, factory service manuals, whatever I could get my hands on. I scoured the internet, tried to learn as much as I could about the Hemi specifically. And then when I figured it out and was able to put a working system together, I said, okay, now it's our turn in the Mopar community to make that happen. So I launched a website as DIYHemi.com, and it was ultimately a resource. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was made to help the do-it-yourself or the person in their backyard have a step-by-step guide on how to build your own wiring harness.
Right.
That's all it was.
Right.
It was and our slogan back in the day was a Gen 3 Hemi swap resource.
Right.
Mike's
The
wearing
OG.
one of our
The OG shirts,
OG shirts.
and now it's Hemi Swap the World is
Hemi
the new
Swap the
slogan.
World, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the beginning, we just wanted to help people. That's all we
Right.
wanted to do. We wanted to make it more popular because in our minds, this was 2014, 15, when the website launched. In our minds, we didn't have enough product offerings from the aftermarket like the LS did. LS, you could buy a bracket, widget, gizmo, anything, everywhere, any day,
Mm-hmm.
night, get online, you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have those same options. So my thought was, if we bring more people to the swap market, then the aftermarket will follow. You have more of a business case to develop components. So that's what it started out as. We were getting calls and emails and people saying, hey, love what you're doing, appreciate you. but I don't want to spend hours making a wiring harness. I don't want to do this. I'm not good with wiring. I'm not good with electrical. A lot of people were getting nervous about it, you know, but they didn't also want to spend copious amounts of money.
Right.
Yeah.
So you guys decided to create DIY Hemi as a business, not just as a information site at this point, correct?
That's right.
And when did that actually start?
I would say that started, we first started sales in 2000, I would say 18? 2018. And we started out simple. We said, okay, if we select a group of components and literally make a manual, a diagrammed manual that says everything color coded, all the bells and whistles, step by step. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that, right? That we could help some people, but we could sell the manual as a packet, and then you could sell a components list. So you had a fuse box, or a PDM we call it. You had the connectors that you need. Everything was in a nice kit, and it's like, here, go do it yourself without sourcing any parts.
Right.
We're giving you every part you need to make this system. That did well. We had quite a few sales, but along with that, we discovered came some headaches. A lot of technical support, a lot of helping people. Maybe they misunderstood the wiring diagram, or maybe it just wasn't for them, that the complexity level was too high. We decided, well, to better serve our customers, let's offer a turnkey product, because most people were asking for that anyway. They just wanted turnkey. And that's when Mike really hit the ground with manufacturing, you know, making sure we had a repeatable process to manufacture products and harness. We got into also rapid prototyping, 3D printing and testing components. So we do all design in-house. We actually print for our hard products, our hardware, like our spacers and those types of equipment. We'll print a modeled one in real time in the house, go test fit it on the engine, make sure everything's copacetic, and then we'll go through the manufacturing process to get everything created and built and shipped wherever it needs to go in the world.
So the real piece that kind of sets you apart, I believe, is the wiring harness here.
Yes.
And that's what everybody's raving about, and it makes swaps pretty simple. Tell me a little bit about why that works so well.
Okay, so this is our base design. It's called the Quick Hemi. And what we decided is, number one, we wanted to keep it affordable for the customer, because, I mean, that's how DIY Hemi started. It started on affordability and the concept that everyone should be able to play. Everyone should be able to Hemi swap, right? So what we discovered in the Hemi swap game is that Chrysler did one thing really well for us, and that was their engine harnesses connected to the vehicle with a body plug, one connector to the body in most cases, and a connector or two to the ECM. Everything else is already provided for you on the engine harness as you get it from, say, a salvage yard, or maybe one of the industry leaders that does powertrain sales, right? So we said, hey, what we can do is just supply what is needed, because the end user already has an engine harness, right? They get it with their powertrain.
So you're using a factory harness.
That's right.
This is plugging into it and going in between the
Right. This is everything you need to go from the engine harness to the vehicle.
Okay.
Right? So you have a power distribution module, and that's all the necessary fuses and relays. Every single one of our systems are tested for QC purposes. They're serial numbered and labeled, so we could track them all throughout their life. You know, if someone calls years down the road, we'll know exactly how it was manufactured, who it was made for, and we could help them, right, with the specific options.
So you're using a factory PCM.
Yeah, factory PCM. So the way it works is you mount your fuse box like this, and then you only have a few more connections. You have one connector that goes to, this is the body plug on the engine harness that's already on the engine. You have one connector that goes, and this is the truck version, this connector goes to the ECM.
There's a difference between the truck and the car version?
Yes. So in the trucks, we only have to supply one ECM connector. The engine harness itself gives you the others. So everything is already in place. In the cars, the engine harness gives you one connector and you have to supply two. So the cars is a little bit different in that you have two ECM connectors on it.
Okay.
Once you have those two connected, If you elect,
These are the extra ones for the cars.
Yeah,
So that's the two different ones.
Yep,
Right.
this will be the extra
So-
ECM, and this is we'll replace this body.
instead
Gotcha.
of this connector, you have that one.
Gotcha. Now you guys manufacture all that in house here?
Majority of it.
Okay,
So
so
we do have help because we're dads, right?
I mean, you have a life outside of
We
this?
have a lot, yeah. We have a lot going on in our lives. So we solicited help. We reached out and we got the base design manufactured, outsourced, and it comes in here and we do all final assembly and QC in-house.
So as far as knowing the product is going to work when it goes out the door, it's not just something made over in China that gets shipped here and you never look at. You
No.
test everything,
No,
correct?
every single thing gets tested,
Mhm.
and not only does it get tested, but we video document every single one.
Okay.
So that's another point towards the serial number is if there's ever an issue at the customer's end, we could say, okay, let's go review the documentation and see if we notice any anomalies,
Mhm.
anything that's just not right.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a full systems check, everything from engine functionality, we rev it. We'll also do an OBD check, make sure that the data port's connecting,
Mhm.
communicating, all that good stuff. So it doesn't leave here unless it's right.
Does it matter if it's a 5.7 or a 6.1 or what about supercharged motors? Do they work on this or
So the
not yet?
supercharged system is a little different, so that's all the newer stuff.
Mhm.
We have those in design right now.
Mhm.
We don't manufacture the later stuff just yet.
But they're coming.
But they're coming.
Yeah.
We have built them. We've
Mhm.
done them for R&D purposes to make sure the system design
Mhm.
works. But being as we're still young and bootstrapping it, we don't really have the funds to just build everything.
Right.
So we're snowballing our way into the more modern stuff.
Okay.
This is really where we started because so many grassroots people, they're going to go with a little bit older Hemi because it's very affordable.
Mhm.
You know.
Yep, and I will say, like right now, we just have the 05 to 08 available for cars and trucks.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, if anybody's curious about what we offer right
Right.
now, 05 to 08, the 09 and up, we're working on. I mean, basically, we're gonna to do the supercharged one. We're gonna have basically a supercharged engine out here.
Right.
So a couple more dollars we're gonna need, I think,
Right.
to do
Yeah.
that, and
Right.
because we want to do it right. We want to be able to put our harness on it, test it, crank
Mhm.
it up, everything that Blake said, QC it to make sure it gets the DIY stamp for it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, so what we did here with you guys is have you guys be at the forefront of the Pink project, which was Steve's Cuda. And did you guys kind of use that as an R&D type piece to make
Absolutely.
sure everything was going together as you expected?
Yeah. So that was kind of what I would say our production proofing.
Proof of
So
concept. Right?
yeah, my car actually was the basis of that system. So it has the exact same harness, exact same design. The only difference is the one in my car was hand built,
Mm-hmm.
and every single wire was all done custom, right? So what we did was once that was built, we took measurements and said, okay, we'd really like for this connector to be here, maybe a little shorter. So the Pink car, he got the production run.
So yours was the prototype. His was the first of the
That's right.
production
The
run.
first of the
Yeah.
production run.
Gotcha.
So, what you see in his car is what you would buy.
Gotcha.
It has the newer upgraded fuse box
Mhm.
with the metal badge, the serial number, everything's wired, tagged, full blown production version.
Got you. Now, from what I saw from that, the cool thing was you could use a 727. You could use your factory gauges. This thing makes that possible.
Yeah, so this does all your basics. What you'll have here is a couple of wires just to connect to get everything running. You have a 12 volt key on. You have 12 volts constant, which is this one. You have a starter position, so when the key is in the crank position, and a starter output, and you also have your fuel pump.
Mm-hmm.
The other two wires you see here are if you choose to run a more modern, like a 545 RFE, that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
But normally you'll just connect these 5 wires here, and
Mhm.
you're off to the races.
Okay.
That's it. What you'll see with the transmissions, as far as that goes, is in the gauges. Let's kind of circle back to that. So transmission, this system will run a transmission 545 RFE, all fine. That's all included. We have an option on the website to add a command wire for the air conditioning system. So you could run the factory AC compressor on a Hemi engine.
Mhm.
That goes for both cars and trucks. So that's one accessory that you can add if you would like. The gauges, as far as like say the voltmeter, stuff like that, that's all standard. So
Mhm.
your car is going to read that just as it always did off of the battery post. When it comes to speedometer, if you have an old school transmission, say a 904, 727, or the 833, like the old 4-speed, still cable driven, so your speedometer is going to work just fine. If you have a tachometer, you could always run a tach adapter, which is that is separate. Not all of our clients have the tach. I know the pink car does not have a tach, so we didn't need it.
Right. So,
And then,
Mike, this piece right here, I see that a lot on cars. What does that do for you?
Yep, so that's our thermostat, dual threat thermostat spacer. Yeah, a lot of people have been buying these things up. But you can see what it all comes with. But I mean, this is basically where you can get your coolant temp sensors. What else can you get? Fan control with this, if you wanted to. So it's got 2 ports here, so you can put 2 sensors there. And a lot of them, this is neat because the ones you see online a lot of times, it just has 1 sensor. It just has 1 port basically for 1 sensor.
Right.
And this one allows you to put basically 2 of them to be able to run like what we're saying.
So this is factory NPT, so it's factory 1/8 NPT. So all your old school Chryslers have that as the sending unit for the gauges.
Right.
So you run your factory sending unit, say if you got a 70 Roadrunner.
Whatever,
Just thread it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way the design works is even though it looks completely polished and everything is anodized and nicely coated, we make sure to treat the lower surfaces right here at the bottom so that way it can conduct electricity and ground out properly. If the entire piece were anodized, the gauge wouldn't work right. Okay. So that's one thing. So that's all you do. And also you'll notice the ports are offset to one side. And most people look at that and they say, well, that's kind of odd. Well, the reason being is when this is bolted on either a car or truck timing cover, you put this on, the ports face the factory fuel injector rail wiring harness. So you take your wires, you tuck them in the Hemi fuel injector loom, and it hides it all the way back to the firewall. So your sensors are tucked out of the way, away from the rotating accessories. All your belts are on this.
And you're not janking them 90 degrees or anything. So
doing anything like that. Back in the early days of Hemi swaps, the way people used to do gauges is one of 2 ways. They would, in the car engines, the timing cover had a bleed hole you could take out and you could thread a temp sensor in. The problem with that is you lose a bleed point. That's a high point in the water pump housing that can have air, so you could have water pump cavitation. It also is just 1 port, so you can't run like an electric fan sending unit or anything like that if you want to run electric fans. What this does is it gets it away from that. The other option that people used to do back in the day is they would cut the upper radiator hose, they'd splice in a barb, weld in some bungs and thread it, and then they would have to drag a ground wire and connect it from that over to the block, and you had all that hanging over the belt drive, you know, and it's, I'm like,
It looks beautiful.
yeah, it looks beautiful. I'm like, man, look, I don't know how most of your viewers are, but Murphy's Law, right? If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So that's why we came up with this. It uses a Biton O-ring, so it's chemically resistant to all fluids in the automotive industry. Just little things like that to go above and beyond and make sure it lasts a really long time.
And it puts it on the right side of the thermostat, right?
Yeah, that's another good thing. And thank you for bringing that up, Mike. Is what it does is it takes the Hemi thermostat, spaces it out 1 inch, and it puts the sending units under the thermostat. So even when the thermostat is in closed position, you're getting accurate temperature readings of the engine coolant. You know, that's something that when you have a spliced barb, something far away, you're not getting true readings.
So another piece that you guys I think came out with was these bolts for the valve covers, and from what I'm told, that those things are pretty nasty. They get rusty, they cut people up, and there's even a fitment, you know, in a small, you know, an A body that they get close to the fender well. And this product solves that problem.
That's right. So the A bodies, especially in tight fit situations, the factory valve covers, especially on the older Hemis, had a stud that came out, and that stud in most cases would be either making contact or fractions of an inch away from hitting that inner fender well. So if you have just restored your car and painted the entire engine compartment,
you're gonna be real pissed off.
We do with Mopars, you'll be pissed.
Yeah.
Especially if that engine torques. Those studs are just stabbing the inner fender well. So that was a thing. I have scars all over my hands from working on them. So we wanted a flush application to get rid of those studs. But the thing is, underneath those studs are grommets. They're rubber grommets that have to be evenly loaded. So your bolt loading has to be uniform across that grommet, or the grommet will deflect and cave in and essentially do nothing. So that's why we came up with these. They uniformly load across that grommet, so it securely holds the valve cover down, and it's smooth. It's completely flush when the screw is inside the washer, just making it, you know, kind of the best of both worlds.
So in this particular project, we enlisted you guys to do it because we knew you knew all the components that we could put into this to make it doable for the average guy, which is basically your motto is you started off by do it yourself. So that came together really well. Unfortunately, you guys don't do that for regular people.
No.
So we want everybody to understand with this project, even though you put it all together for us and we're able to lay it out for everybody to read how to do it, that you cannot take the burden of everybody in the world calling you to do a Hemi swap. You guys have the parts, but you can't do that at this point. So
That's right.
At this point,
yeah.
you know.
So, but there's a lot of guys looking for needing the knowledge and needing the parts. So, would you suggest they call you or email you? You technically advise a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, how would people get in touch with you?
First, I would say go to our website, DIYhemi.com, and go to the forums. Mike set us up a great forum, and it's a great way. I'm a little old school, right? I love a good forum.
Right.
Because the information is out there. You can read.
Right. Yeah.
It stays out there.
Yeah.
You know, instead of answering a question 100 times individually, if you posted information out there where people can read and get the answer on their own anytime, day or night, it's going to help the masses at a much quicker rate.
Right.
So instead of constantly being on the phone answering the same question 100 times, the forum is really where we like to engage with people and help them out. You know, we get emails that we can answer as we can, right? But you will notice in the forum that other members step up because they've had the same question. Maybe they've gotten the answer from the forum, or they figured something out on their own, and that community builds and it helps each other really move along. I think with the advent of social media nowadays, a lot of people don't use forums, but if they want to find an answer and they Google search, it's going to land you on a forum, right? So some people have questioned, hey, why do that? Why not put it on the basic social media? Well, it's searchability. It's the ability to find it and get information very quickly. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
So what's next for DIY? I know you guys are working on a lot of projects. What's next on the list?
Oh, next on the list is, now these are the quick harnesses we told you about. Next on the list is a complete full harness and moving into the later years. So we're talking about the Eagle stuff, such as the 09 and up, 5.7s, the 6.4s, and the Hellcats. We've worked on those individually for R&D, but now we want to offer a product to the masses. As the 03 through 08s are getting a little bit up there in age, the customer base is really usually wants some more low mileage drop in, right? Or even a crate. So that's where we're going to migrate. We're going to migrate to the newer stuff, and we're going to offer a few more hardware components. So we have some things that we're working on right now with air conditioning. So using the factory AC compressor to save some money and get some ice cold AC, especially in the South. It's pretty hot down here.
All right. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to put this project together for us and letting everybody know, how to do it. So I think we've come out with a definitive guide with the help of you and your parts. So just thank you very much for your time and your effort. So I think it'll be well received in the Mopar world.
Rob, thanks for having us, man.
Thanks, man.
We just want to Hemi swap the world.
So this is the 340 that came out of the Cuda. Is this the original 342, the car?
It's the original block, yes.
So it's a numbers matching block. So you could technically take your block, put it away, keep it if anybody wanted a numbers matching again, and put it right back in, because there's really nothing modified that you did on the car, correct?
Correct. One thing to understand about this is that if this was a rare Mopar, then this kind of swap wouldn't be done. This was, kind of run-of-the-mill 340 Cuda. Nice car, but it was really a great candidate for this kind of an upgrade.
So putting it in perspective, this 340 was probably in its condition 270 horsepower, maybe 250, 270, and then the new one you're estimating with the tune on it to be in the 450 range. Is that correct?
450.
So you're virtually doubling your horsepower.
Right.
All right, when we look at this motor, most of it looks factory, but obviously there's some aluminum valve covers there that are not factory pieces. Where did you get those from, Steve?
We ordered those from a place called the Crank Shop in Vermont. I like them because they were raw aluminum, which makes the intake manifold. That's really a centerpiece of the engine, and I thought it would give an old school look to it. So we put we got a set of wires and those from the Crank Shop.
Now, from what I know about crankshop valve covers, they don't come in raw aluminum unless you call them and twist their arm to do that, correct?
Correct. They
Okay.
they sent it to me raw aluminum with no guarantee on the finish and everything. But what we did is we took the components and coated them properly. 3 coats for all of the silver components you see there: intake manifold and the valve covers.
Now, you didn't use clear on that. You used, is it called shark skin?
It's called shark skin.
Yeah.
And what it does is coat it in a way. It's a spray can, rattle can, and we put 3 coats on each of the pieces. And what that does is minimizes the amount of oil stains or dirt, and it's cleanable.
It's not a clear, so it's not going to yellow, which is really cool about it, and it just gives you that original look that you can actually clean, which is really cool.
Yes.
So Steve, it looks like the Pink Project Step 1 is complete, and are you happy with everything?
So far, yeah. Really like
Yeah.
the performance. Pretty straightforward installation.
Right.
It's a perfect package for this 72 Cuda.
So the goal that Mopar Collectors Guide has here is to follow someone updating their car to all the current goodies and to see how it works over time and to see what else needs to be done. And so after driving it and kind of hashing out where it's at now, what do you think the next step or Project 2 or Step 2 of Project Pink would be?
Step 2 is now to upgrade the suspension. It's got some nice pieces on it, but overall the suspension needs to be upgraded to take advantage of the horsepower. And we're also going to have to put some stickier tires in the BFGs on it.
All right, and we're looking for things to do to this car. So if you guys want to see anything or have anything in mind that you'd like to have us thrash out, give us some comments of where we should go with this car, and we will be talking to you again on the Pink Project soon.
So if you're interested in swapping a new-gen Hemi into an old Mopar, subscribe to Mopar Collectors Guide Magazine at moparcollectorsguide.com, and we'll throw in a free t-shirt along with the Pink Project article that gives you all the pertinent part numbers and information you need to know to do a complete, painless Hemi swap into your old Mopar.